So let's get started with Balin's tomb. So you're going to start with a big sheet of 20mm foam, and you're going to make this into a 60 by 60 piece. I haven't insulted your intelligence by including that in the schematics. Now to do this, you're going to just mark out 60 from each end, maybe put a point in the middle, and then depending on the length of the rule you have available to you, you're going to mark this out and then slowly cut through it, and then a little snap there. And there, lo and behold, you have your base. It's as simple as that. Now, for the walls, you can take the bit that you've cut off, the 60mm piece that's spare, and for me, I've got a hot wire cutter, so I can set this to a 150mm gate, and then run that through, and that was my lengths cut. Now, I did miters on this, and I have got absolutely no idea why. It just made the construction a lot more complicated later on. If you look at the schematics, you can just make two walls 60mm wide, and the other two side walls, which are 560, and just slot it together without the need for those 45-degree angles. So don't do that. I'm making the mistakes for you. Now, to make the sidewalls here, we are measuring 80mm up, and that is the floor height, so nothing in particular happens below that. You saw that I had one of the side floor pieces, and that was to mark out the where the archways are going to go, which I'm cutting out here. The schematic will help you a lot more than me just telling you to use the side piece. So use the schematic. That's what you've paid the money for. So now the archways, I did them a similar shape to this in the schematic, but I did one that's a lot easier to cut out. I made life incredibly hard for myself with how kind of little I made some of the details, and to be honest, it wasn't really of any benefit, and I think that the one that I've done in the schematic is actually a lot better. So same shape, just a bit bigger. So you're going to do that in the 3 different places on the side walls, on each side wall, and then you're going to do a frame around it just by drawing parallel lines, which are about 5mm away. So just hold the ruler 5mm away and parallel, and just mark it out. And then what I'm doing here in the background in the video, whilst I've been talking about the frames of the door, is to do some horizontal lines 10mm apart for your brickwork, and then we want to be adding the bricks on. Now, I decided that the bricks should be fairly chunky on this, so they are 40mm wide bricks. So what I like to do with this is just to measure 40mm along, and then make the ruler perpendicular and do every other line, mark that out and do all the way along with that, and then you can do the same kind of intersecting that to make the bricks knit together, and that's what it ends up looking like. Now, it's all fine and dandy doing it with a knife like that, but you can't see it that well. So then you go over the whole thing with a pencil just to widen all of that to bring it to life a lot more, and it ends up looking like that. Now, here is the bit which is going to take the most time with the whole thing. I decided to be kind of movie accurate and to make it look really awesome, to carve runes onto every single wall. So there's a rune sheet included, so you know what dwarven runes look like, but I'm literally drawing one every centimetre, so every kind of 40mm brick has got 4 of them on it, and I'm doing that across the entire thing. Yep. That took a long time, and I did it on every single wall. And you can do the same, but I swear it's worth it. Put a film on in the background and just get on with it, and it is absolutely worth doing. You can see the results here, and we are going to be going all the way across the whole thing. We're going to be skipping out the door frame, but we are going to be doing the center, which will be cut out a little bit later. But now on to base coating it. So this is a 50-50 mix, roughly, of black paint and PVA glue. This is just cheap black acrylic paint. I'm going to be covering the entire area, and then once that's done, you just can leave that to dry. Now, we're going to create the really awesome stony texture, and with all the variation is to use a sponge on this. So you're going to take a sponge. Is just like a pull out from a tray of miniature storage things, you know what I'm talking about, and you can just dab it on. And what you're doing is you're making sure that the excess is off of it. And what you're doing is you are putting the kind of random sponge pattern on top of the random tinfoil rolling pattern, as well as the runes and stuff. And that really just creates this very random, very cool looking surface. Now, having done this, I decided that it didn't look quite right, particularly with these archways, and I decided they should be set back. So what I did was I cut all the way through with a knife, and then I don't know why I did this, but I decided to use a paper clip for the finer details. I should absolutely have used a mini file. I have a mini file. There's a mini file about 2 meters away from me, and I didn't even think to use it, but it would have created a much better cut, but that's not what I did, but that's what I advise that you do when you do your own one. Now, once you have cut out this piece, it can be sliced in half. I used a hot wire cutter for that, but you could use a sharp knife and some patience. And do a little bit of a tin foil roll on the inside edge of this frame, and then you want to be putting a lot of glue on all of the edges here, and we are going to be slotting these half depth things back into place, and we're going to leaving that to dry, and I think that the result of that is a much better piece. Now, the front wall is going to require some patience for carving out the door, but it's not overly complicated in terms of the design itself. So to begin with, we're going to mark out where the front support piece is going. These are like, I think about 20 mm, the schematic will show you, but putting those in place will show you exactly where those are going to go. It means that you're not going to be doing some unnecessary runes. Also marking out roughly where the stairs are going to be going. So then I'm going to be using that drawing there to mark out where the door is. So in the schematics you will see exactly where this is, but it's quite a simple design to put into place because it's a lot of parallel lines all going to the same height, and then the top has got parallel lines as well, so it's just kind of the angle that changes, but it's fairly simple to mark out. And once you have marked it out, it's a case of cutting it out. So we can begin by cutting out the entire door. That's going to be the easiest one to do. So cutting the door all the way out, just with some time and a sharp knife and some patience, and that comes out like that. Now each of the other different ones is going to be cut to a different depth. So the closer it is to the hole, the deeper we're going to have to cut down. So we're scoring down about a centimetre, I think, and then using a ruler here, I decided to mark out the edge and do it really, really carefully, neatly. You could just do this by eye. And once you've got the idea of how deep you're cutting, you can just go into it like that, and then you can move on to laying it flat. I mean, you could just do all of this with it laid flat. It is a little bit fiddly to try and get into the door to do all this marking, but whether you decide to do it with it laid flat like I'm doing now, or whether you decide to mark it out, the result is the same. Because basically on each layer, you're doing a vertical cut down to a kind of predefined depth, and then you're doing a horizontal cut to meet it. And if you do the horizontal cut is the one which is going to define how good it looks. If you go too deep on the kind of downwards cut, it's not going to matter too much because you're just going to be cutting a little bit deeper into a bit of foam that's not really going to get seen anyway. So having done that one, you need to repeat the process with the other ones. They're going slightly less far down, seeing my bald spot quite clearly there a moment ago. And so this is about half the depth left, and then you're going to do the same on the last one. Now, you'll see that test piece there I've got for that Dwarven King face. Now, the Dwarven King face is included as part of, as the files here. So I marked out a space in which it was going to be going, and then I marked out where all of the brickwork would be, and I did the brickwork first before moving on to the space where the King's face was going to be. Now, most important thing here is that this is securely held in place. So I just wrapped it around, so you can print it out to the size that you want to wrap it around, and then just hold it in place with some sellotape to make sure it isn't going to be going anywhere. Now, I'll be honest, sellotape doesn't stick particularly well to foam, but it's good enough for a few minutes. And that is literally all it takes. This is probably, I think it was 5 minutes work. Just take a sharp knife, take the smallest blade that you've got, and just cut into the foam on every single line. So if you can draw, if you can use a pen, then if you can trace, then you can do this. You're just cutting through the paper into the foam, just make sure you're going all the way downwards, and you end up with something that looks awesome like that. And then you're just going to take a pencil nice and sharp and just widen it a bit, and it ends up looking like that, which is, again, completely awesome. And I did that on both sides. I put the runes on, and then I did the undercoat as I've done before, and then I've painted the entire thing with the sponge just like on the other one, and you end up with the front wall finish looking like that. Isn't that awesome? Now with the back wall, I've done an archway on each side, and the central bit is done is just a plain bit of wall, and it has a window in it, and that's where the shaft of light comes in to light up Balin's tomb. Now, I did some rough maths to work out the angle it should go in at, and it turns out that one of the cut-off pieces would be forming the perfect angle for this window. So I didn't want to cut the window straight through, I wanted it to be an angle. So I held this bit of foam up against the bottom and had my knife blade going in at the same angle on the top and the bottom. So it formed this kind of slanted cut through rather than it just being like directly cut through. So I did the top and the bottom first at this angle, and then kind of just filleted the sides so that I could have the shape, and you end up with this window. So that's not straight through, as you can see, it is at an angle. From there, just adding in more bricks, lots of bricks, bricks and bricks and bricks, lots of runes, undercoat it with the black paint, and then sponge it. And that is the back wall complete. Now, the internal walls, they are fairly simple to do, so the schematics will show the exact size they are. Both sets of wall, the front and the back, are the same shape. The difference between the front and the back is that the rear internal walls, as I'm about to show you here, do have an archway cut in them. So I was just messing around and making sure that I had the things set at the right height. But essentially, once you've set the floor height like this, you can then start cutting out the archway. Now, there is a difference between this schematic and, this that I'm making here and the schematic shown. I moved the archway just in a little bit so it doesn't have this kind of flimsy bit at the back. It is more, it's kind of a centimetre to the right, I think, something like that. But it will look ever so slightly different to my one, but I think that it's something that will look better. And once again, it is the different archway shape rather than the one I'm showing here. But again, very, very similar, but you just cut it out like I did there. And then you want to do a frame around it. And then you can go on and do the brickwork. Now, I did the cutting of the shape of it afterwards, and that was because I wanted it to have like a parallel line-ish with the archway. So I wanted the archway to be in first, because I kind of made this up as I went along a little bit. But yeah, so putting the brickwork in all the way around, and then doing the front here that has to have some brick pattern on as well. And then you're going to be doing exactly the same thing with the runes and stuff. Now, if you do get any places that don't feel like you've done it particularly well with the lines, as I did here, you can just simply cut them out. You can just put a bit of damage onto the brick, and that mistake that you made all of a sudden is completely disappeared. So once the bricks were all done, it was time to add on the runes. So, you've seen that earlier on, just putting lots and lots of runes on. I put a little tiny runes on the door frame. I'm not entirely sure why, because they're so small, they're simply not going to get noticed. But yes, across the whole thing, runes, runes, runes. Then I'm going to follow that up with the black undercoat in just a minute. Obviously, the tinfoil ball roll as well. I did some there. That was my test paste to make sure that looked good. You don't need to do it across the whole thing. So this is true of the rear internal walls as well, sorry, the front internal walls as well, in that there's a whole bunch of spaces which I put runes on, which you don't need to put runes on. And believe me, with the amount of runes that you have to draw, you really don't want to be doing any more than necessary. So no, I did runes where the stairs were going to be covering up, for example. Now, instead of runes on this part, I did a zigzag pattern, so just doing a couple of diagonal lines, kind of 45 degrees in one direction and then 45 degrees in the other, just so we had something a little bit different going on, and just so I could not draw some runes from it. But yeah, exactly the same thing with the rear internal walls, in that we're just doing the brickwork and the runes, and then painting the whole thing with the black undercoat before sponging it, as you have seen previously. And that just about wraps it up for these pieces. They really come together nicely. As soon as you put this sponging detail on, it just really brings them all to life, and I think they look fantastic. And that's how you do all of the walls. So next up, whichever bit you want to make, really, but that is the first video in how I made Balin's tomb and how you can make your own.